Your brain's physical structure determines whether you're an introvert or extrovert, and the differences run far deeper than anyone imagined. Scientists have discovered that introvert and extrovert brains are literally built differently, with distinct structures, pathways, and chemistry that explain every behavioral difference you've ever noticed. When researchers at the University of Iowa conducted PET scans on volunteers in February 2000, they uncovered something extraordinary. Introverts and extroverts showed completely different brain activity patterns while lying quietly during the scans. Introverts lit up in their frontal lobes and anterior thalamus, the brain regions responsible for remembering, problem-solving, and planning. Extroverts activated entirely different areas: the anterior cingulate gyrus, temporal lobes, and posterior thalamus, regions that process immediate sensory experiences. But here's what makes this discovery truly mind-blowing. Studies published in the Journal of Neuroscience revealed that introverts actually have larger, thicker gray matter in their prefrontal cortex. That's the brain's CEO, responsible for abstract thought and decision-making. Extroverts have thinner gray matter in this same region, suggesting they dedicate fewer neural resources to internal processing and more to immediate sensory experiences. When an introvert seems to be overthinking something, they're not being difficult or indecisive. Their brain is literally built to process information more thoroughly. The thicker gray matter means more neural density in the areas that handle complex analysis and planning. Now here's where the science gets truly remarkable. When information enters an introvert's brain, it takes what researchers call the long route. Picture this pathway traveling through multiple brain regions like stops on a subway line. It goes through the right front insular for empathy and error detection, then to Broca's area for speech planning and self-talk, through the right and left frontal lobes for planning and decision-making, and finally to the left hippocampus for memory storage. Extroverts use what scientists call the short route. Their information processing takes a more direct path through areas that handle immediate sensory input like taste, touch, sight, and sound. It's like taking an express train versus making all the local stops. This explains so much about introvert behavior that people misunderstand. When an introvert takes longer to respond in conversation, they're not being rude or disinterested. Their brain is literally running information through more regions, cross-referencing it with memories, checking for errors, and formulating a thoughtful response. The longer pathway means more thorough processing, but it also means more time. The differences don't stop at brain structure and pathways. There's a whole chemistry component that changes everything. Dr. Marty Olson-Laney discovered that introverts and extroverts respond to completely different neurotransmitters. Extroverts are driven by dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward-seeking behavior. But here's the crucial part. Extroverts have more dopamine receptors, but are less sensitive to it. They need more dopamine to feel happy. The more they talk, move, and socialize, the more they feel dopamine's pleasant effects. Introverts operate on an entirely different chemical system. They're more sensitive to acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter associated with calm, relaxation, memory, learning, and decision-making. When introverts are alone or with small groups of close friends, they get a surge of acetylcholine that literally recharges them. This explains why introverts can become physically ill from too much stimulation. It's not psychological weakness, it's biological reality. Their nervous system is naturally tuned to the parasympathetic side, which handles rest and digest functions, while extroverts naturally prefer the sympathetic side that manages fight, flight, or fright responses. Think about how our society is structured. Most educational environments, workplaces, and social settings are designed for extrovert brains with high stimulation, constant interaction, and immediate responses expected. But for roughly half the population, this creates a neurological mismatch that can be exhausting and overwhelming. When introverts need solitude to recharge, they're not being antisocial. They're responding to a biological need as real as hunger or thirst. Their brains require downtime to process information through those longer neural pathways and to restore acetylcholine levels. The University of Iowa study involved 18 healthy individuals, and the results were remarkably consistent. When participants lay still during PET scans, allowing their minds to work naturally, the brain activity patterns clearly separated introverts from extroverts. When a part of the brain becomes active, there's increased blood flow to that region, which shows up on the PET scan. This research demolishes the myth that introversion is something to overcome or fix. One personality trait isn't right or wrong. These variations in brain activity suggest that a lot of our individual differences have an underlying biological cause. When researchers examined blood flow patterns, they found introverts have higher blood flow to the frontal lobes and anterior thalamus, exactly the regions involved in planning, introspection, and internal processing. Extroverts show higher blood flow to the temporal lobes and posterior thalamus, areas that process sensory information and external stimuli. We're not talking about a simple binary system. Extremely introverted and extroverted personalities are two ends of a continuum, with most people falling somewhere in between. But the neurological differences are consistent and measurable across the spectrum. This science explains why introverts often excel at activities that require sustained attention, deep analysis, and careful decision-making. Their brains are literally optimized for these tasks. The longer neural pathways that might slow down immediate responses actually provide advantages in situations requiring thorough consideration and complex problem-solving. Meanwhile, extrovert brains are optimized for processing immediate environmental information, making quick decisions, and responding rapidly to changing situations. Neither approach is superior, they're different tools for different challenges. The research timeline shows how recently we've understood these differences. Acetylcholine was discovered in 1914, but its role in introvert brain chemistry wasn't understood until the early 2000s. The University of Iowa PET scan study was published in 2000. The gray matter thickness studies followed shortly after. This means generations of people grew up not understanding their own neurological needs. Introverts were told they were too quiet, too slow, too antisocial. Extroverts were sometimes criticized for being too impulsive or superficial. But these aren't character flaws, they're natural expressions of different brain architectures. Understanding these differences can revolutionize how we approach education, workplace design, team dynamics, and personal relationships. Instead of trying to force everyone into the same mold, we can recognize and leverage these neurological differences. For introverts, this research provides validation and practical insight. Your need for quiet processing time isn't a weakness. It's how your brain achieves optimal performance. Your preference for depth over breadth in social connections aligns with your brain's natural chemistry. Your tendency to think before speaking reflects sophisticated neural processing, not social anxiety. For extroverts, this research explains why introverts aren't just being difficult when they need downtime or take longer to make decisions. Understanding the acetylcholine system can help extroverts appreciate that introverts recharge differently and have genuine biological needs for lower stimulation. The bottom line is revolutionary. Introversion and extroversion aren't personality choices or learned behaviors. They're expressions of fundamental differences in brain structure, neural pathways, and neurochemistry. Your brain's physical architecture determines how you process information, what energizes you, and how you navigate the world. This isn't just fascinating science. It's a roadmap for understanding yourself and others at the deepest biological level. The next time someone asks why introverts are different, you can tell them the truth. It's not about being shy or antisocial. It's about having a brain that's literally wired for a different way of experiencing and processing reality. And that's not just okay, it's exactly how human diversity is supposed to work.